My passion for Age of Sail wargaming drove me to develop the mechanisms already tried and tested in Mad for War into handling very large fleet actions. Let's face it, Napoleonic fleet battles are chicken feed compared to the epic affairs of 140 years before. Recreating battles with 100 ships per side will stretch all the variables available to gamers: time, space and money. Few of us have the capability, the budgets, tables or energy to spend days managing enormous fleet battles in acres of indoor space, but such a challenge should not deter us from trying. In 12400 and 11200 I have been able to make a fair stab at this. The games have been enjoyable and really engaging. The period character and the flavour has been captured and gamers seem to like it. Handling up to 20 ships per side is doable in 2 to 4 hours depending on the scenario. To have a go at something really big, it was necessary to do some prototyping because I reckoned to make it achievable for everyone I would need to go downscale. The laboratory I chose was the daddy of them all, the 4 Days Battle of 1666. If you haven't heard of this, you need to get with the programme. 2 massive fleets met in the relatively shallow waters between England and Holland, and for 4 epic days they knocked 7 bells out of each other in one of the largest naval battles in history. This is an A-list event. On the Dutch side are superstars like Van Nys, De Liefde, Tromp, Evertsen and De Ruyter. On the English team are heavyweights such as Sprague, Albemarle, Harman, Askew and of course the darling of the age, Prince Rupert. It had the most famous ships and the most prominent commanders, the Waterloo of the waves. I figured that it would be possible to recreate the sweep and drama of Schweningen, Lowestoft, Texel, Barfleur and of course the 4 days using models in the dining room, but first I had to get the mechanisms worked out. For that I turned to good old cardboard and some basic computer skills. I decided to fight using 2 of the squadrons from the 4 Days Battle. That may not sound like much, but on the English side we're talking about the Van or White Squadron of the fleet, 21 ships and 1,242 guns. For the Dutch, we're going even larger. The first or Central Squadron commanded by the greatest admiral of the age, Michiel de Ruyter. His command had 33 ships with 1,492 guns, giving a 20% advantage over his opponents. These are but a fraction of the total fleets, but take us to the next stage in the journey of recreating Age of Sail battles. Having considered fleet organisation, it was relatively straightforward to create a system on paper, which I know can be recreated with models. Each fleet is divided into a number of squadrons, between 3 and 7. Each squadron is divided into a number of divisions, usually 3. Each division can be subdivided into groups of 2 to 4 ships, usually 2 or 3 groups. By creating 2-dimensional counters for each group and ensuring the mix within each group was logical, we got to the 2 squadrons. The English squadron has 3 divisions, each of 2 groups. The Dutch, 3 divisions of 3 groups. Fire ships were grouped separately and attached to the squadrons. Many of the gaming principles for Mad for War transfer over seamlessly. The turn sequence, initiative, movement and manoeuvre, ships and crew quality, gunnery, boarding, combat and morale. All of these work well with only minor tweaks. The difference now is that the basic operating unit is not a single ship, but a group of ships, here represented by a large oversized card counter. This is the correct number of ships per group and their sizes are roughly proportionate. I realised there would be some fudging with the oversized bases, but that was okay because when we go for ship models, probably 1/2400 or 1/4800 scale, the problems will be minimised or disappear. The roster sheets look very similar to those I use for Mad for War, but a little more detail is included. I have also increased the number of shooting rounds potentially available from 6 to 8, as I'm allowing the groups to fire in a poor state of reloading for these fleet rules. The game is not a set phase of the 4 Days Battle, but a chance to pit historical forces against one another and road test the mechanisms. I have played the game twice now. Each time it lasted about 2 hours. The results were similar but arrived at in completely different ways. The English squadron fought well in the first iteration but was roundly beaten. In the second, well, you'll just have to wait and see. Remember, the whole purpose of the paper-based run was to prove the mechanics for model ships. I realised when setting the ammunition levels for each group that these would actually define the game. I started with the English, who looked to be very low on ammo. When I came to the Dutch, they were worse. When groups are out of powder and shot, there are only two things to do: attack or withdraw. That proved to be a huge influence in the game. Let's run through the thrust of the encounter. The Dutch approached from the northwest in 3 divisions, line abreast and to windward of the English squadron. The northernmost, under Van Ness, crammed on full sail in order to close the gap quickly and force the English into a reactionary manoeuvre. By turn 2, Askew veered northeast, picking up some speed and attempting to maintain his line and the larboard broadside to the enemy. Over the full 11 turns, the Dutch gained the initiative 10 times, mainly due to the high command rating of de Ruyter and the windward position. The shooting started on turn 3 when Barclay's leading group from the van opened fire on Van Ness' division. Gunfire erupted across several divisions on both sides. Askew was in the thick of it, exchanging fire with the lead elements of de Ruyter's central division. All 3 Dutch divisions were engaged, but Harman, with the smallest English group, lay to leeward of the main line and moved quickly to try and tack to gain a windward position north of the enemy. Several groups had designated heavy guns, which is indicated by 2 reload markers, red for English, blue for Dutch. To avoid a shooting penalty, 2 reload dice are thrown for these groups. Both must be removed to eliminate the penalties. The English line was quickly disrupted as de Ruyter's lead ships attempted to push through, cutting off Barclay's van division from Askew. The English commander was unable to organise an attack and began to take fire from all around. Even though his group was the strongest in the battle, it quickly was written down, slowing and becoming surrounded. He was also burning what little ammunition he had at an alarming rate. The lead group of Liefde's rear division was the weakest in the Dutch command. Some of its smaller ships were badly damaged in collisions with Askew's larger vessels and then shot out by the heavier English ships. The 60 Hollandse and 34-gun Nijmegen were burned out, and the 36-gun Wapen van Utrecht was hulked by gunfire. First blood to Askew, but worrying developments were taking place. We had already used 4 feet aboard, so I slotted in a further 2 feet to allow the fight to run. Barclay's heavy ships had pounded Van Ness's leading ships, causing them to disengage, being too battered to continue. Their damage slowed them, and Barclay, almost out of ammunition, caught them, taking the large 68 Geloof and leaving the burning wrecks of 250s, Zuiderhuis and Houdenlohe. Out of ammunition and separated from half of his ships, Barclay was compelled to break off. His stragglers were subjected to a ferocious attack led by Van Ness's Eendracht, accompanied by the Groot Hollandia, Princess Louisa and the small Zwolle. 2 ships were captured, the 60-gun Fairfax and the 54 Sevenoaks. The merchantman John and Thomas was burned. By the end of turn 7, a 3rd Dutch group, 3 ships from Ruyter's division, led by Jan Jans van Ness, had been so battered that they withdrew to the southeast. Askew was now surrounded and his command beaten to a pulp by de Ruyter's division. The flagship Prince, barely afloat, struck with the 60-gun Helversen. The 40-gun Crown was sunk and Oxford burned to the waterline. Harman's command had performed extremely well, expending almost all of its ammunition, and was making for the northeast, having seen Askew surrender. Despite the battering, the English may have been able to claim something from the day at this point, but the super-aggressive Art Van Ness fell on the laggards, 2 fourth-rates, the Anne and the Old Rainbow. He attacked both, setting them on fire and winning a victory on turn 11. A final fireship attack by the solitary English ship Providence was beaten off by de Ruyter's line. I've done some further tweaking since the playtest, but the rules are ready to go, I think. Big fleet actions are now part of the rules canon, and I may include this as an addendum in Mad for War. If you enjoyed the video, please like it, subscribe to the channel, and join me for some more wargaming action soon.